Hello everyone and welcome to this video. We're really excited to have Mary McGuire from Basketball Ireland with us today. As you all know, I like to have these videos to pretty much share with you professionals that are in the field that maybe you want to go in, but also that impact sport management wherever they are. So Mary, thanks so much for being with us today, and we're really excited to learn more about you and learn about your background and everything else. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, me too. All right, so real quick, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about kind of your background. Where are you from? By the way, Mary's in Tala right now, I believe Tala, Ireland, in the Dublin area. Tell us a little bit about where you're at, where you're from, your educational background, everything.
Yeah, perfect. Well, you mightn't be able to see it very well, but I'm at the National Basketball Arena in Tala, which is the headquarters for Basketball Ireland here in the country. So all of our major events are held here, and our office is based here. The federation is here as well. In terms of myself and how I ended up over here, my original degree is in English literature and Spanish. And I think the kind of gift of the gab, I talked my way into a job with journalism once I graduated. So I was a sports journalist for a long time, and I don't know how it is in the States, but in Ireland, maybe 10 years ago, it was quite a male-dominated field, sports journalism. So it was a good and tough learning ground. I was going out to matches at the weekend, so this would be Gaelic football, which is kind of the national sport here in Ireland. So standing on sidelines with my notebook and my umbrella because it's always raining, and just figuring out what was going on, and just trying to make a name for myself. And from there, I got promoted to sports editor of the newspaper, so that was pretty cool. And I also got really lucky. I got the opportunity to write a book as well about sport, about a women's football team here in Ireland. So that was just a really kind of exciting time for me, really passionate about sport. Obviously, I play a lot of sport and have done for many years. So it was kind of the natural journey for me, I suppose, to combine my love of English and writing with my love of sport. So that's how that happened. And then after a while of being a sports editor, obviously the shift with digital and online was something that I really felt it was a skill I really needed, and it was something that I was perhaps lacking. As much as a training ground that print newspapers was, obviously, as we all know, the shift to online has been huge. So I moved across then into online journalism with a company called Maximum Media, who own titles such as Her.ie, Joe.ie, SportsJoe.ie. They have a whole host of them and have recently opened in the UK as well. So there was really a huge training ground for me in terms of digital. Everything was online. They're only based online. They don't have a print newspaper at all. And it was all about social media and how to drive traffic to the site via social media. So I got a really good grounding there in everything digital. Because I was coming into it from having never really done it before, only, what we do ourselves on our own social media platforms. So that was really a really strong training ground for me. And after about a year or so, I was really missing sport, because they cover a lot of, while I got to do some sport, they cover a lot of, kind of news, like celebrity news and stuff like that. So I was really missing sport, and I kind of had a look around, and Paralympics Ireland were looking for a maternity contract, and the contract was going to run up until the end of Rio 2016. So I was kind of like, I'll just throw myself in here for this, didn't think I'd get anywhere near it. I was like, imagine going to Rio for the Olympics, that would be pretty awesome. And yeah, I ended up getting it. So straight into Paralympics in December 2015. So I had a 9-month contract that ran, as I said, up to the end of September 2016. And that was just phenomenal. That was an experience I don't think I'll ever forget, because I literally had to hit the ground running in that job. I'd never really worked with Paralympic athletes before. I'd interviewed them all right for my job, but there was so much to learn about how athletes are classified, how they perform in the sport. So it was a really steep and fast learning curve. Mm-hmm. And you really had to kind of think on your feet and be ready for anything really, because around Paralympic and Olympic athletes, there can be so many different things, as in sport in general. You know, there can be unforeseen injuries, different things like that. So that was an incredible experience. It was the whole way through to Rio. I got to manage a team of 6 people over in Rio, and we were all providing content for Ireland. Ireland, of course, was ahead in terms of the time difference, so we had to be really fast on turnaround. You know, when we won a load of medals at those games, thankfully, but we had to be really quick on turnaround because obviously Ireland were going to bed a lot of the time. So the turnaround for that was really fast. And I also worked with our national broadcaster, RTE, and so I got to kind of bring my journalism back into it then. I kind of was their roving reporter. So myself and a cameraman would be down in the mix zone and doing the interviews of that. So like everything was just fantastic. And I think the grounding for me being able to do that job came from the digital journalism job that I'd held for the year, because it was just the speed of it. And digital journalism, obviously there was the pressure to get stories up really quickly and, you know, to keep the traffic high on the site. And I think that was a really good grounding then for when I came into the Paralympics, and you know, Ireland newspapers were calling, you know, we really need this now, and the turnaround was just so quick. So that was a phenomenal experience, but unfortunately it was a maternity contract. So I'll never forget my move to Basketball Ireland, because my interview for that job was actually downstairs in the Maracana Stadium after Ireland had just won a gold medal in the 100-meter sprint. Jason Smith, one of the Irish athletes, he's known as the fastest Paralympian on the planet. He had just won a gold medal, so we were after, like, it was so emotional. We were after seeing the Irish flag going up, the national anthem being played. And then I remember just going down into the bowels of the stadium and doing an interview with Basketball Ireland, just completely hyped up, you know, and excited. And yeah, I came off the plane from Rio on the Wednesday, and I went into the arena on the Thursday to meet my now boss, Bernard O'Byrne, who's the CEO of Basketball Ireland. And that's where I've been ever since. So since October 2016, I'm now Media and Communications Manager in Basketball Ireland, and loving every minute of it.
Oh, great. Well, you brought up some things that were really interesting there. First of all, for our folks watching in the United States, please explain what Gaelic football is.
Oh, this is a tough one. Gaelic football, I suppose it's a mixture of rugby, of American football indeed, a bit of soccer. So you can play the ball with your hand, basically. So you can catch the ball and you can also pass it using your hand, but it's the same kind of goals as rugby. So we've got the 2 poles and the bar across, and if you put the ball over the posts, you get 1 point, and if you put it under the posts into the goal, you get 3 points. And it's a huge sport here. It would be the #1 sport here in Ireland. And there's also another branch of it called hurling, which is used with a stick and a ball. So together they're called the Gaelic Games. But if you get a chance after watching this video, hop onto YouTube and just search Gaelic football or hurling, and yeah, just look at it, because it's a phenomenal sport. And hurling is the fastest field game on the planet as well. So I keep saying the fastest thing on the planet, but hurling is that, and it's a phenomenal sport to watch.
Yeah, and you know what I'll do for everyone watching the video, I'll make sure there are links for other videos. There's actually great videos that show the games in progress, and it's very fascinating for me. I spent almost a year in Ireland, and to see it in action was an amazing thing. You know, tell the folks watching what all Ireland championships are like in those sports.
Oh, an All-Ireland. Unfortunately, I'm not from a county who gets to an All-Ireland very often, or even at all. So basically there's 32 counties in Ireland, and they're all contesting to be crowned All-Ireland champions. And it runs the whole way through the summer. Every Sunday, you know, you've got the big game. You're playing a rival county. So, for example, here in Dublin, their big rivals would be Kerry, there'd be Mayo. They would be the big games. And you know, the stadium here in Dublin is called Croke Park. So if any of you are coming to Ireland, you definitely need to go see that. And that holds about 70 or 80,000 people, and that's full. It's completely sold out for the All-Ireland final. It's an incredible experience. I was lucky enough, when I was a journalist, I got to have a press pass to these finals, but tickets are like gold dust. Even if you're from the county who's being represented in the final, it's so hard to get a ticket, because They're just, fans follow them everywhere, up and down the country. They follow these teams. It's really like a community sport. So the entire community gets behind, because there's local club teams, and then obviously the talented players from those club teams progress to the county team. So it's just a phenomenal experience. And if you're ever here around the end of August or at the start of September, you've got the men's and the women's games on, and the finals on, and it's just, Dublin is the place to be for those time of the year.
Yeah, and one of the things for anyone watching right now, one of the greatest things about, and I know we're jumping from basketball to Gaelic sports, but Mary, how much do those players get paid to play?
They're amateur players, so they don't get played at all, unfortunately. So, like the training that's done, they could be training 3 times a week as a team, but then they also have strength and conditioning programs and different gym programs. So their whole week is gone in terms of evenings. It's a full-time job, really. Then on Saturday they could be traveling up to another county to play, or they could be playing a club game on the Saturday and then maybe a county game a couple of days later. So it's really a full-time job. And as I said, the way sport in general has gone, it's gone so professional, and the backroom teams that are involved now, you've got video analysis and sports psychology, and that's all come into Gaelic as well, even though as I said, it is an amateur sport. So it's fascinating to see the growth of the sport, and to see that these players still, the couple of days after winning a really big match, are straight back into work, whatever their job is. I suppose the teachers are the luckier ones, because they have the summers off in Ireland, which is prime GAA season. But in general, most people are working throughout the championship, and yeah, they're just regular people, I suppose.
Yeah, I like to bring that up because I love Ireland, as you know, but I think just the way that the passion of sport in the country is different than it is here in the United States. It's like you were bringing up, community based. It's county based. It's for any of my folks that are watching right now from the state of Alabama, where everyone says, "What county are you from?" I don't say County Baldwin, but only Baldwin County. Oh, you're from the south part of the state. So people know exactly. It's almost like Ireland in that way. But I figured I just wanted to ask you about that, because everybody's going to go, "What's hurling? What's?" And because for me, when I went over the first time in 2015, the very first day I was there was the All-Ireland hurling final, the senior final. And, for anyone watching too, in Ireland for the final, the folks that are broadcasting or announcing are speaking in Irish.
Yeah.
So it's very fascinating to me. And I just thank you for sharing about that.
No, not at all. And it's definitely an experience I'd recommend. It's just, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it in the world, I think, anyway. There's nothing like it in the world, being in Croke Park on an All-Ireland final day, or even any of the finals throughout. It's just a phenomenal experience.
Yeah, great. Well, and you brought up Paralympics. Now, for anyone watching at home, some people might not even know what that is. What are the Paralympics? If you don't mind sharing about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the Paralympics run directly after the Olympic Games. I talked about that, got the gold medal that time. Jason Smith, he's visually impaired, so his vision is extremely reduced. He wears sunglasses a lot of the time, just because a lot of what he sees are glares. I remember a story he told me from London 2012. He also won the gold medal that year as well. But from London 2012, he said because he's been so fast and nobody's really been able to catch him, he's always kind of been used to like really getting out in front of people. But in London 2012, he's got peripheral vision, and he saw someone coming up inside him, and he was like, "Oh no, like, this is my gold medal," So he kept running around and really like pushed himself out, broke a record with the speed that he was going. But it turned out that what was actually coming beside him was the camera. The camera was keeping up with him, so that just kind of shows the limited vision that he had. He couldn't decipher that. Obviously, when you're going at that speed anyway, you're not going to be able to be looking around too much. But there's different levels of abilities. There's people with cystic fibrosis, there's people who might have an amputee, so an arm or a leg, and they're all then classified in their sport according to their ability. So for Jason, for example, he's called a T13. So there's different levels in the sprinting. There's T13, T12, and they all are classified by the level of vision that you have. And so it's a fantastic thing to be involved with, because the stories are so inspiring, for want of a better word. What these people do, the training that they go through, they're elite athletes, the exact same as Olympic athletes, and they're training the exact same. A lot of them would be professional. They're funded here by Sport Ireland or Sport Northern Ireland. And the training and what goes on behind the scenes is absolutely incredible. And being given the chance to be with that team in Rio was something I'll never forget, because it was just a team of over 40 athletes who'd all come through different things in their lives, and different struggles in their lives. And to see them compete on the biggest stage in the world was just phenomenal.
Wow, that's great. Well, thanks for sharing about that. And we're all about educating and making sure everybody knows about this. And your experience is obviously so critical for anyone that's watching. So thank you. Tell me a little bit about your normal day and your job at Basketball Ireland. What do you do every day with the association there, with the Federation?
I don't think there is such a thing as a normal day in Basketball Ireland. Every day is different. We're quite a small team in the office. So as media manager, it's quite an umbrella term, really. I'm a marketing manager, I'm a social media manager, I'm a presenter, I'm a scriptwriter, I manage budget, I manage videos, I do video editing. Not very well. That's a skill that I'm still sharpening. And there's times then that I become a TV floor manager. So when we put our national cup out on TV, that could be something that I have to pick up and do and direct people and figure out. And a lot of it as well is about relationship management with our key stakeholders as well, and being able to talk to them, be that the fans, be that the players, be it the board. There's always a relationship, and of course the sponsors, I shouldn't forget those. There's always a relationship that needs to be managed. And I think every day is different. If you want to take the kind of bare bones of the job, scheduling our social media, what's coming up for the weekend, because we're obviously in the middle of regular season at the moment. So getting ready for what's coming ahead the weekend in terms of all of our 4 national leagues. Then trying to prepare content then as well that can go with this. So this can be anything from a preview, which we send out to all of the journalists around the country. It'll be a review once the weekend is over. And it's also kind of different stories that happen around the league. If there's, different kind of upsets, I suppose, around the league, or new players arriving in. Temple Oak, one of our big clubs here in Dublin, they recently signed an American, G. Proby, who was here last year, and he was the player of the year last year. And for them to get him back this year was a big coup for them. So we did a nice piece around that. And then every Wednesday I do a Facebook Live show, which we've called Time Out. So that's been something that I brought in last season. I just kind of felt that, we were getting some media coverage, not like the States, where basketball is kind of one of the big sports. In Ireland, it comes under Gaelic football, under soccer, and under rugby. They're our big 3 here. So we're kind of competing for headlines constantly with them, particularly at the moment with Ireland playing so well. In the rugby, they beat the All Blacks there at the weekend. So we're constantly competing for space in the media. And last year I kind of thought to myself, okay, if we're not getting into the mainstream media, except for that review at the end of the weekend, then we need to become the media. We need to start talking about our players. We need to start giving them a voice. And so I just kind of set up, I suppose, a Facebook Live show. I said, this is a chance for players to get their say out there. And as well, I kind of wanted to start creating role models. I wanted that the good point guards in the country, the Isaac Westbrooks, or the Jason Killeen, or the Grania Dwyer, these are all very well-known Irish players, that the kids would have someone to look up to, and that they get to hear what Grania had to say and how it feels like to play in the big cup final in the month of January. I really wanted kids to have something to look up to, but also it was kind of multifaceted. I wanted that basketball got out there as well, and that the awareness started to grow. So that's been really, really successful. It runs for about 45 minutes every Wednesday. evening, and the basketball community has been really receptive to it as well, which is something I was quite nervous about. I thought they'd kind of think, oh, who's this girl coming on here, just setting up some show. But they've been really receptive to it, and the players have been fantastic as well. Like, we've had some really interesting players on as well who've been talking about different things around the league, and it's kind of nice to hear their insight into what's going on, because I can talk about it all day and claim I know what's happening, but when you hear somebody who's actually playing in it and how it felt like to go up against this other player, or how it felt like to play in front of 1,600 people or 1,200 people, which are all big crowds for Irish basketball, it's something different. So, and that's something I could never have said, because football was my sport. I've never played in front of that type of crowd in football and basketball and anything. So for me, it's always been really interesting to hear, and it's something that we've been able to cross-promote across our channels, across Instagram and Twitter, of course, and we've kind of used different little clips from it from Snapchat and stuff as well. So it's kind of helping to drive traffic elsewhere across the site as well, and as I said, just kind of build awareness for the sport.
Sure. Well, I wanted to bring something up, an old-fashioned term, in column inches, right? So
Yeah.
when you think about the old model of news and media and everything, you're always fighting for more column inches. Can you explain that a little bit to the folks watching?
Yeah, column inches, coming from journalism, I suppose, and particularly coming from a background in print journalism, it's probably something I understand quite well, because I often would have had a story that I would have thought was fantastic, and it was the best story, and it deserved to have, the entire 3 columns wide, of a paper, because, had gone out there and I talked to these people and they're amazing and they've told a really nice story. And then I give it to my editor and he's just like, and he just chops it, and all of a sudden my fabulous 700-word piece, in-depth insight into this team is suddenly reduced to 250. If I'm lucky, maybe the top 2 paragraphs, he whips them out and that's all that gets in. So I think from that, first of all, that trained me in how to write, because I was always so conscious that an editor was going to come along and chop. So I was like, I really need the message that I want out there the most really needs to be in that first 2 paragraphs, and particularly in the main paragraph. It just, in case somebody comes along and chops it. So that's the thing, because in terms of column inches, that is how I suppose cutthroat it is, because I might think it's a great story because I'm a journalist, or I might think it's a great story because I work in basketball and I love basketball. But when it comes to the editor, he might think, oh, well, that soccer game the other night, which was a 0-0 draw, is actually more important because that's what the readers want. So we're going to give that 2 pages, and we'll give Basketball Ireland the little column down the right-hand side of that page. So it's a constant battle, and that's why we're constantly looking for stories. Like, it's great to write the previews and to write the reviews, and that's stuff that people need to know about and what's coming up and what happened. But the human interest story is the one that usually lands the best in terms of getting us extra column inches. So we have a lot of fantastic ambassadors in the game, and Kieran Donaghy is one of them. He crosses over between basketball and Gaelic football, so he plays both of those sports, and he plays them at an extremely high level. And the best thing about Kieran is that he is a fantastic ambassador for basketball. So even when he's on talking about Gaelic football, he will always talk about basketball, and he will always bring it in. And it's kind of a blessing really for me, because he's so well known across Ireland as this hero of Gaelic football, that when he mentions basketball and when he talks about anything, people listen. So stories like his, if he says something, people listen. So I've kind of been trying to identify those people around the sport, and those people who have had really interesting stories and really interesting backgrounds, and their road to basketball, or their road to the Irish international team as well. And that's something where we've managed to pull back a couple of column inches. As I said, the preview and the review, while it gets in the paper, the editor does do the chop on it. So he'll look at it, or she'll look at it, I should say, as well, and take out the bits that they think are the most relevant, and that's all that you get. So it is a constant battle, and as I said, because basketball isn't the main sport in the country, it is quite a battle, but it's definitely a fun one to take part in.
Sure. Well, and one of the things I was going to ask you too, and of course I'm intimately familiar with Basketball Ireland because I work as a volunteer, as a consultant and everything, and on the Elite Performance Committee. But tell us a little bit about how the structure of basketball works in Ireland, in Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, with respect to the national leagues and the international program.
Yeah, definitely. So, Basketball Ireland actually governs the 32 counties of Ireland. So it governs North and Southern Ireland. So in our national league, we have 49 teams this year, which is phenomenal. It's a big growth from last year. I think it's a growth by about 7 or 8 teams. But we have teams who are based in Northern Ireland, but they play in our national league because, as I said, it's a 32 county league. So there is no real definition from our point of view between North and South, just merely as a geographical location. Yeah, so we've a couple of teams there. Belfast Star, who are obviously based in Belfast, are currently top of our men's Super League table. So they've been garnering a lot of headlines up there in Northern Ireland for us, which is fantastic. But we've a couple of new women's teams up there as well. So it's been fantastic, and all of that. We've also set up regional academies around Ireland. So these are at like under 14, 15 and 17 level, and these are all designed to feed into the Irish international team, which again is a 32 county team. Players from North and South can represent Ireland, the same as any sport. They can also play for Great Britain if they so wish, if they're from Northern Ireland. But a lot of our players who play in the National League would tend to then declare for Ireland. Obviously, they've been playing kind of as part of the 32 county league. So these academies are pathways towards these international teams, and we've academies all over North and South. We've academies in the Northwest, in the Northeast, and then the whole way down through the Republic as well. So from our side of things, it's not a defined. There's no border per se on the sport in Ireland. Even though Brexit might have had something to do with that, but at the moment there's no border on the sport in Ireland. And yeah, it's just fantastic. It makes life really easy to work with. We've got a great support up there. Basketball Northern Ireland are a big support to us up there. They run a lot of the local leagues, so kind of the step down under the National League, we have local leagues. So they run all of that up there. There's also a lot of really strong organisations up there. Sports Changes Life is one of them. They're based in Belfast, and they bring in a lot of scholars from America, Victory Scholars they're called. And, you know, the support that they give to the game, and, you know, the addition that they've had to the strengthening of the game in Ireland as well has been phenomenal. So it's definitely, you know, a united, you know, effort, I suppose, in getting the game out there. And as I said, it is a 32 county sport. So it's really fun to work with.
Yeah. And one of the things I was going to ask also is, can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that have been really big headlines for Basketball Ireland with respect to the sport over the last 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, well, I suppose our biggest headlines was last summer in 2017. We hosted, so for the first time, we hosted an underage European Championships. So this is pretty incredible. What was more incredible, I suppose, is that we were going, as always, we were clashing with another big sporting event. We were going head to head with the Women's Rugby World Cup, which was also being held in Dublin. So the way we kind of looked at it was, instead of us kind of going head to head with them, we kind of looked at it as a celebration of women in sport, and that Dublin was, you know, celebrating the achievements of women in sport by 2 major championships being held in the capital. So we had the Ireland under-18 women and 22 other countries here in Dublin, and it was just a fairy tale journey, really, because Ireland, you know, exceeded all expectations. In terms of an outsider looking in, obviously, I'm sure they knew that they were doing some pretty nice stuff in training, but, you know, we kind of didn't want to dare to dream, really, because we've been kind of it's been a bit of a roller coaster in terms of Irish international basketball and in terms of results. Like, we've done well and we've continued to improve throughout the years, but this team won their first 2 games, and they were expected to win those first 2 games. You know, they were kind of teams that we'd played before, and we played at under 16 level, and we kind of knew we had the beating of them. But suddenly they just kept going through, and they kept winning. Like there's no real words for it really. They topped their group unbeaten, which was a phenomenal achievement. And then they went on to the quarterfinals where they won that. And then all of a sudden the entire basketball community just stopped and was like, are we checking out these girls? Like the arena was so loud. There was a sea of green. I've never, like, it was giving us goosebumps. Like the crowd was just phenomenal, the support that they got. And they went the whole way to the final and got a silver medal. They were lost in the final to Germany. But and just to put that in context, actually, Germany then went on and won the A division this year. So that same team, well, give or take a few players, that same team went on and won the A division. So this was a B division tournament. We came second to Germany, and we got promoted to A division basketball for the first time ever in Ireland's history, which was phenomenal. And it was all done on home turf as well. So like, I can't even describe the emotions. Like, just even being part of it, even getting to run after them with my phone to get video clips of, I was like, oh, this is amazing content, first of all. But it's just an amazing thing to be involved with, you know, just outside of my job, I suppose, just to be involved in something so spectacular. So like, that was really a defining moment, I think, for the sport in the last 3 years in particular. While we've had, you know, some fantastic end to season, end to regular season, there's been some big battles at club level, and there has been success at international level. Nothing really, this was kind of the pinnacle since I've been working there, at least, and it was something that we've just been building on since. Our registration for women has grown. Like the following month in September, registration opened, and our female registration grew from there. Our attendance at regular season games has grown, and there's just a buzz around basketball at the moment, which led us on to hosting the European Championships for small countries this summer, which is a senior women's tournament. And like the lead into that versus the lead into the under-18, like, it was like journalists who mightn't have known about the sport, not known about it, but like hadn't written about it, or people who didn't really know about basketball were suddenly like, oh, you're hosting another tournament this year, because we were suddenly on their radar because of what happened, the under-18s. And that was incredible, I think, because a lot of my friends wouldn't be that sporty, and they were suddenly talking to me about basketball, and wow, it popped up there on Facebook, and I saw what happened, and oh, I read it in the Irish Independent the other day, and you know, it was just out of this world. So we got to host the senior women's tournament this year, and again, unfortunately the results didn't go as well for us on the court, but off the court, it was just as big. You know, the support was still there. People were engaging with us, and the media as well were engaging with us, which was huge. We got to sign up 3 media partnerships, which is something we didn't have for the under-18s. Everything from the under-18s was organic, created by us and kind of pushed to them. But for this summer, we got signed up with media partnerships, and some of those media partnerships have now carried through into our regular season. So that's really been the big story, the international story, really, from the last 2 years. It's been fantastic to be involved in it. It's just such a buzz around it. It's great.
Yeah. What about, tell us a little bit about the National Basketball Association and its partnership with Basketball Ireland.
Yeah, so we've signed a really cool thing this year. It's the first time ever. Thanks to yourself, Tim, and of course Conor Meany, who is a colleague of mine. He's the commercial manager in Basketball Ireland. So basically, a partnership has come together between the Junior NBA and Basketball Ireland. So this is a really exciting thing for us, because I've kind of been involved again from a social and marketing side of things. But the kids, when we announced that, like, to this day, since January, if you were looking at our analytics, that has been our biggest story on the website, the announcement that we were teaming up with the Junior NBA. It's the most read story so far this year, which, if you take it into context, January is our busiest month. It's our National Cup. It's kind of our marquee event of the whole season, and it's live on TV, and everyone's involved, looking and wondering what's going on, and those are the articles that tend to be our most clicked for the whole year. So in January, we get our highest clicks for the entire rest of the year. For the Junior NBA to surpass that is phenomenal, because the clicks that we get in January is huge. So the junior MBA is our most clicked story. And what it was, we got to set up the clubs around the country, got to link in with their local primary schools, so their elementary schools, and link in. And so I think it's 2 to 3 primary schools per club. And what we did then was we did a junior MBA draft. So we got to match the schools up with an NBA team, which was huge excitement, you wouldn't believe. So it was literally, you know, pulling a ball out of the spinny thing and just being like, okay, you know, this particular school has been matched with Golden State Warriors. This particular school is now the Chicago Bulls. And the partnership has been fantastic because the NBA then sent us over like the team kit for the kids to wear. So we got to present it to them at the junior NBA draft, and like their faces were just lit up, you know, that they were after getting, you know, the Chicago Bulls uniform, or they were after getting the LA Lakers uniform, or whoever the NBA team was. So that's been fantastic in that it's created a buzz at a younger level around basketball. Our school's basketball is quite strong, but it's probably the strongest at kind of middle school, high school level. So at kind of younger age groups, while it's strong, it probably wasn't as countrywide strong. Dublin is a very strong leagues in the primary school, but so that's been phenomenal. We've heard loads of people have now, you know, brought in basketball, bought basketball gear, bought basketball equipment for their schools, stuff that had never been in place before around the country. And to see some of the kids, like, we're getting videos sent in to us, and, you know, to see them, they're learning the basic skills, and they're just out there having fun and enjoying the game, and they're there wearing their NBA gear and they're loving life. So it's been an incredible thing, and that's all going to lead to, I suppose, a big festival of basketball is what you would call it, down over here in the NBA, or in the National Basketball Arena, I should say, for want of confusion. That's going to be a big festival of basketball on the 12th of December. So we're really looking forward to that. All the kids are going to be coming up to us here, and we're going to host them here, and they're all going to just be wearing their gear. And yeah, it's a phenomenal partnership to be involved in. Just to see the kids getting involved is huge.
Well, and your ability to market it through social media channels, and every channel you have the means to do so, is obviously building the sport of basketball in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And I think that's the thing that's the neatest thing, is that you're utilizing the media to actually build the sport's passion throughout the country. And I think that's the thing that's really, really cool. That is really neat. Well, okay, so tell everyone that's watching right now, really the biggest thing. How does someone break into the field you're in?
I think a lot of hard work and a little bit of luck, because, as I said, I actually said it from the start, how I got into journalism was the gift of the gab. I literally went in to the editor of that newspaper and I was like, I'm a really good writer. I'm really good at interviewing. I'd never done half of the stuff before. And you know, I was like, I'm fantastic. I'm great at sport. I'll write about sport all day. Wouldn't it be great for you to have a female journalist writing about sport? So I used everything that I could possibly think of. As I said, gift the gab, and I kind of talked him into it, I think. And yeah, I got a really fantastic job from it, and the stages from there have been incredible. But yeah, I think there is a lot of hard work. It's getting to know people in the different organizations. So a lot of students, particularly in the Dublin colleges, get in touch with us, a lot of marketing students, because, you know, they're writing a thesis and they want to talk to somebody who's involved in the job. And what I found interesting with some of them is they've actually kept that relationship with me since they've left college. And that's quite interesting, because now when we're hiring, I'm like, oh, I remember that guy, Sean. He had a really nice angle on his thesis, and he's done some really nice stuff voluntarily for, you know, a football club. And maybe I'll give him a call. And I think that's what I've found interesting, is how I've reacted, nearly coming from it as an employer point of view, is that I've really noticed the people who've kind of maintained relationships with us. Or, you know, we also, as you know, have a lot of volunteers and people who helped us out with the Dublin tournament last year, and of course the senior women this year. But anyone who kind of really helped out, or I don't know, just had a nice way about them. They tend to stand out in my mind, and I'll remember them for future. And a lot of it is word of mouth as well. Like I was quite lucky for a lot of freelance journalism jobs I got. You know, I might have met a journalist on the sidelines at some very random game and just built up a rapport with them. And then, you know, if they get a phone call for a job in that particular area, we'll just say Dublin, if they get a phone call for a job in Dublin as a freelancer, they might say, oh, look, I'm not free, but there's this girl, Mary, who I met last weekend, and I'll have a call with her and see if she's free. So there is a bit of luck, but there is a lot of it is just relationship building and, you know, making sure people know what your skill set is, you know. So as I said, that first day, when I went in so green to that editor, you know, I knew that I could write. English was my passion the whole way through school. And as I said, my degree was in English. And I knew that I really wanted to write for a living. And that's how I sold it to him. I was like, this is my skill. This is the skill that you need. So just hire me. And I think relationship building and, as I said, just being able to talk yourself up a little bit. Never goes too far astray.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, I believe that confidence is a major factor, self-confidence, and getting anything in life. And actually, I wrote an article on networking in sport and really in general, and I'll make sure that's in the video here at the bottom. Actually, not in the video, but in the description. And you brought up something that's really important, Marion. I think it's presentation.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about presentation in terms of written presentation, in terms of verbal presentation, in terms of visual presentation. How important are those things?
I think they're extremely, extremely important. Like, particularly in the world of sport, you know, we can often, I suppose, present ourselves in sports gear. You know, I've often been working and you're like in track pants and sneakers and you're just running around the place because you're so busy. But when it comes to, I suppose, presenting yourself to a possible employer or even to somebody like yourself, a lecturer or anything like that, I think it's really key because, again, flipping the role from the other side of it as somebody looking for future employees or future freelancers, it's something that I actually really notice myself is how somebody presents themselves. So that's even, as you said, written presentations, CVs are key. When we were hiring quite recently, about a year and a half ago, we got, I'd say, over 300 CVs, resumes, into our office. And just basic things like doing a spell check on the CV is vital. And you know, we all do it ourselves. You're in a panic applying for a job. Maybe you only spotted it and the deadline is 5 p.m. that day, and you're flying away writing this amazing cover letter and your resume is fantastic, but it just takes 5 extra seconds to run a spell check on it. And it could be the difference between you being put in the slush pile or you getting an interview. And I found that a lot when I was going through CVs. I was looking at it going, oh, like they sound really good, but they're not really able to spell, or at least they haven't checked the spell checker, you know. And I don't mind if somebody's not able to spell, but that's what computers are for. There's, you know, the tool is there. So I think in terms of written presentation, I think that's vital to just run a spell check over stuff. And even what I found sometimes, if you have the time, I found sometimes if you read it aloud, I find that really helps me, because then you nearly see where a comma is. You can nearly see where you pause naturally as a person speaking. I've often read things aloud and I sound like an absolute lunatic sometimes in work because, you know, I might be writing an article for one of the newspapers and I'll be sitting there reading it like word for word, just going right. But it's amazing what you pick up. And another thing that I notice, sorry, this is kind of a little obsession with me, but another thing I notice when I'm writing myself is that I repeat words without noticing. So, for example, I like to say the word just a lot when I'm writing. And I also like to use the word meanwhile. So in my preview yesterday, this is just an example. If I hadn't read it aloud, I wouldn't have noticed that I used the word meanwhile 5 times in the space of 2 paragraphs. And it's just that connecting word that you're like, oh yeah, meanwhile over in Cork. and you don't realize that you're doing it. So I think reading it aloud, as funny and as embarrassed as you might be to do it, I think it is so key. And as I said, for even basic punctuation like commas and stuff, it's fantastic. And then visually, again, I think just being smart, and no matter what you're working in, even if it's sport, even if it's on a farm, I think that first impression is vital. And I think for walking in to meet somebody for the first time, I think you do have to be smart. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be full-blown suit and tie, or, you know, a full dress or whatever. I just think if you're business smart, if this is what you would happily wear to an office, I always kind of think to myself, if I was a lawyer, is this what I would go into a courtroom in? And if it is, then I think it's usually pretty good for an interview. You know, and a lot of it comes from my mother as well. Irish mothers are very famous for this, you know, but she's always very much like, you know, presenting yourself well is so key. And it doesn't matter, even though she knew I was going to end up in basketball or in sport. She knew I was going to be in sport anyway, because I've been sports mad since I was a kid. But it didn't matter that I walked around the house in tracksuit bottoms and a hoodie. No matter what, she was like, even from a young age, she would have brought me to the shop and was like, right, we are buying something smart for you to wear. It doesn't matter what the job is, you have to turn yourself out nice. And I think that's something I've carried through a long time. And it's something I notice as well then for people who come into interviews. I notice what they're wearing. And a lot of interviewers say that they don't, but I think you do. And I think it's something that you naturally do as a human. And when you first meet someone, you kind of appraise their overall appearance and how they're put together. So yeah, I think it's important. I could talk about this actually all day, but yes, I do think it's very important, both of them.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up. This is something I wish my doctoral students that are working on their dissertations and applied doctoral projects could hear. I will definitely be sharing this with the students because, and by the way, anyone watching, I have not spoken with Mary about any of this. This is on her. So the fact is, we are on the same wavelength, she and I. So tell me, what are the good things and what are the bad things about your job?
Ooh. The good things I'm going to start with, because there's so many. I'm a people person, and I love getting out there and talking to people. And I think kind of, you know, no disrespect to people who do 9-to-5s, but I think a 9-to-5 in an office would kill me. Like, as much as some days I wish I had it, because I could kind of have my evenings to myself. But I think I just love getting out and meeting the grassroots of the sport, I suppose. And that's why people look at me and they're like, oh, you work every weekend, that's awful. And I'm like, well, it's not awful, because first of all, I get paid to watch sport, which is fantastic. Second of all, I get to go out and meet all these people who I would never have met in any walk of life at all. Like, I'm going out to gyms, I'm meeting these volunteers who do unbelievable work behind the scenes, and thankless work really as well. And you know, they're running a full club, they're doing fantastic work underage, they're building the future of Irish basketball, kind of outside of the spotlight. And I love meeting them, and I love chatting to them, and they usually go and make you a cup of tea, and they look after you. And there's nothing nicer, I think, than going out and meeting those people, and meeting the players, the younger players as well, and getting to know them, because usually I get to go away. Luckily, I get to go away with one of the Irish international teams, and I start to get to know the players, and a lot of those players then lead on into the Irish team. So the good things about the job, I suppose, are I get to write, I get to manage what I write, when I write, who I write about. I get to deal with the media, which kind of keeps that love of journalism going for me as well. And you know, I've picked up a lot of skills in this job. And you know, again, it was like Paralympics. It was kind of hit the ground running. When I got the job, regular season had already started. So it was kind of like, oh, I have to learn about 40 teams in the space of 2 days. So I've picked up a lot of skills. And as I said, video editing is still one that's coming for me. But I think technology has been huge for my job. If I didn't have the likes of Facebook Live, if I didn't have Instagram, if I didn't have Instagram stories, if I didn't have, you know, SoundCloud, which helps me record interviews, I think my job would be a completely different landscape. And I think I've been really blessed that I've been in this job in an era where digital is just so cool and you can do so much with it. Then on the other side, the bad side, the only thing I would say is that in terms of digital, you are never off. You are always on. So this could be an 11 o'clock at night, somebody on social media messages you to tell you that there's been a leak in the roof of the gym, that there's a game on in tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So they've decided to move the game, you know, to somewhere. Now, those things do often come in by email more so, but you're switched on all the time, because if something like that comes in at 11 o'clock, you then have to let the league manager know so she can sort out referees and commissioners, and you know, the other team obviously have to know where they're going. But stuff like that could come in, or somebody as well could complain, do you know? And that's where social media it's a two-way, because obviously, you know, back in the day in basic marketing, you know, the brand used to just talk to the customer. Now digital allows that two-way conversation between the consumer and the brand, which is fantastic most of the time. But some of the time there is that kind of disgruntled person who might get in touch with you on social media. And again, it could be at all hours of the night. But you still need to respond to it, because as a brand or as a governing body, like, you need to be seen to be engaging back with people. If I left that tweet sitting there, it would just go toxic, you know, if we didn't respond to it. And I don't always respond to it publicly. I often send them a private message and I say, look, you actually might have the wrong end of the stick here, or whatever it is. But I think it's vital that you do respond to people. And because I have that mindset, that means I'm working all of the time, even though you're not, but you are. And there's breaking news all of the time. Like Aiden Harzaigahan over in the States, he's fantastic now. He's hopefully a future NBA prospect for us. But even the stuff that's going on around him, because obviously you guys are a couple of hours behind us. So, you know, some of the stuff mightn't happen till late at night when it's happening kind of middle of the day in America. So there's stuff like that. And we have a lot of kids out there in America who are doing fantastic stuff as well. So that would be the only thing I'd say. But in saying that, I don't really mind being on. I'd sooner be on and answering stuff like that and, you know, allaying worries or allaying concerns than for it to go unanswered until somebody comes in at 9 o'clock again the next day. But that could just be because I'm a bit of a control freak like that.
Well, I think everyone in this business wants to do it right. You know, most folks aren't going to go into a job and say, yeah, I'm going to screw this up. And, you know, when you care enough about, you bring up the brand, you know, you are your own brand. Can you talk a little bit about that in the sport profession? I mean, as an individual, how are you your own brand?
Yeah, I think it's key. And like, you nearly, if you're studying marketing, you nearly need to take on board everything that you study as part of a brand, even like how it's positioned, where it's positioned, you know, the promotion of the brand, and kind of take that on board for yourself as well. You know, take LinkedIn as your page. Like, how are you presenting yourself? I think that's so key. How you present yourself, and social media in general is a minefield for a personal brand as well, because a lot of companies we now know check out people's social media before they might look at interviewing somebody or before they might look at hiring someone. So I think it's something that you really need to manage as if it was a brand. You are a brand in terms of being a professional, in terms of your career and progressing in your career. It is something that you really do need to manage. And I think social media and being aware of how you portray yourself on social media is something that is key. And online in general, you know, things don't disappear that easily on the internet. It's very easy for someone to screenshot, as we've seen with a lot of politicians. You know, it's very easy for somebody to put out a tweet, delete it 2 seconds later, but, you know, 100,000 people have already screenshot the tweet. So it exists now forever. So I think that that's something that you really need to be aware of as a professional, or as a young professional who's just starting out. You know, your social media is basically another arm of your resume, really. you know, who you're following, how you interact with people, even just in terms of language. I think language is really important, and how you talk to people on these sites, you know, preferably no cursing words or, you know, stuff like that. I think that's really important. But yeah, managing your own brand is key, and this is everything, as we've already talked about how you present and how your words are presented. But again, I think if you think of social media as the window into your resume, like you kind of want to give them a nice window to look at, you know, before they delve even further, because it is something I definitely do as a marketing person. If somebody's applying to do an internship with me, and marketing is now digital, do you know what I mean? Like, it's obviously both, it's, you know, integrated across traditional digital, but from our point of view, it's nearly 90% digital. And if somebody's applying to be a marketing intern, the first thing I look at is their social media. I look at their Twitter. Are they active on Twitter? Because if they're active on Twitter, then they'll know how to use Twitter for me, for our business. Are they active on Facebook? Are they active on Instagram? Are they active on the platforms that our audience are active on? Will there be a training element when they come into the job, or are they comfortable on these platforms? And I do look at them as well. This sounds completely creepy, but I do look at them as well, just to see, you know, what they're doing on social media. Do you know, is it something that ties in with us as a brand? You know, like if they're retweeting something that's kind of controversial, or, you know, maybe not something that ties in with the brand values for us, it might be a hesitation on our side then if we see something like that. So I always think, in terms of managing yourself as a brand, self-presentation, as we said, visually is key. What you've written about is key. But again, how you present yourself online, you have an online persona as well. You know, it's part of the extended self. What kind of self are you going to portray online? And just think that future employers, or future, you know, anything that you want to do in life, like, you just have an online self now, and you really need to craft it.
Wow, thank you so much. That's great advice. You brought up internships.
Yeah.
Briefly tell us a little bit about why are they so important for the future sport professional?
Oh, internships are phenomenal. If I'm going to use Paralympics as an example, because we got 4 students over from one of the big colleges in Dublin, UCD, who came in to do an internship with us. And it was just a short internship. I think it might have been 2 to 3 months. But from our side of things, as the organization that had brought them in, it was a phenomenal help. But we get to help them. If somebody's eager to learn and they're interested in the field, which these particular guys were, and they all had different interests. One of them was in sports psych, one of them was in sports marketing, and different areas. So the guy who was in sports marketing was fantastic, and he just came in the first day, and he was so eager just to learn and to see what he'd been doing in college, to see it in practice. And I think that was key, because, like, I love academia, and I've gone back and studied marketing and studied digital marketing, like, part-time. But I think putting what you're doing in the books into practice, there's no better feeling, and you even learn more kind of on the ground in the business as well. So I think internships are key. You get to hopefully work with someone who will be able to, you know, help you learn some things, to guide you through some things, like stuff that you might have learned in college, that they can show you how it's then best put into practice, and like best practice for different things. It's key for you to start building relationships that we talked about earlier. Then, you know, I'll always remember the guys that worked with us for Paralympics, you know, and if they ever came back to me looking for something, I would go out of my way to help them, because I was like, they were a fantastic help to me in a time that was absolutely crazy. We were getting ready to go to the Olympic Games. And I just think it's really key for so many things. There's nearly not enough words to put on how important internships are. In terms of getting something on your resume as well, because we've all been in that vicious cycle of, oh, I want the job, but I can't get the job because I don't have the experience, but I can't get the experience because they won't give me the job. So we've all been in that kind of like, what are we going to do? So that's where an internship comes in. An internship is the perfect bridge between that. I have no experience, but I want this job. And you could be completely qualified for the job, but experience is so key in the industry. So I think that's the bridge there. An internship will get you the experience. It will show that you're committed, that you're able to, you're disciplined, I suppose is another word for it. You're disciplined to hold down a job. You're disciplined to show up for work on time. You know, and usually if you perform well, you'll get a good reference from the organization as well, which will help you, you know, forward into your next job if it's a, you know, a full-time job or a part-time job. So yeah, I think they're key, and I think they're a great learning ground for people, and a great way of meeting people, I think, because, you know, with basketball, we work in with a lot of sports. As I mentioned, we cross over with Gaelic football, but we also go to a lot of different conferences, particularly with my job with sports marketing. We get to go out to a lot of conferences, and any intern that's interested, I just bring them with me and I introduce them and I say, oh, hey, this is Tom, and Tom's with us from Trinity. He's learning all about sports marketing. Tom, this is Jim from the Irish Rugby Union. And, you know, there's a connection made straight away that a student or an intern may not have had access to before. So.
Wow. Well, that's great. Now, before we let you go, because you've got a busy day in store, I'm sure, here on Friday. By the way, Mary is a very, very humble person. She has done a remarkable job in terms of getting so much more hits on social media and impressions and everything else. She's very humble about that. But if you were to go to the basketball, if you go to any of the sport web pages over in Ireland, you're going to see that Basketball Ireland is trending at one of the highest levels in terms of sports over there. So I have to add that plug.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for taking the time. I do have one other question, just one.
No worries.
Okay. What kind of advice? I mean, you've given a lot of incredible advice. This has been wonderful for anyone that's going to be watching this. What's some final tips, final advice for the folks that are watching, the students that are out there, the people that are like wanting to climb the ladder and get into the profession of sport, whether that's sports marketing, sports psychology, sport coaching, sport administration, whatever it is?
Yeah. My best piece of advice is to start researching. And I don't mean that as in go to the library and open the books and look at the journals. I mean, start researching the industry. So for example, when I started with Paralympics Ireland, I obviously looked, before I had even kind of got the job, I looked at what they were already doing. And then I looked at what Great Britain were doing. I looked at what the Spanish team were doing. I looked at France. I looked at Germany. I looked at all of their social profiles. What are they doing? What is the best practice? Is there something that they're doing really well that we could use? And I just started looking at the industry. I started looking at who the people were in the industry. So who the different CEOs were, but who the different marketing people were. I connected with them on LinkedIn, and just started conversations really about stuff that I was interested in. But the big thing I think really was to look at what other people are doing. Like Basketball Ireland, we obviously look at GB, what they do. They're the closest to us. But like obviously we're looking at the NBA. If we got our budget to go up a bit more, we could, but like the NBA obviously is something that we look at. FIBA, who is the governing body over here, is who I look at as well for best practice. And I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly looking up what is the best thing to do. And I think for someone going into that field, what are the sports psychologists doing at the moment? What are the sports marketing people are doing at the moment? Again, this is going back to this idea of their brand. Like sports psychologists in particular, there's a good few of them over here at the moment who are running fantastic YouTube channels. There's people sports nutritionists who are doing articles weekly, a blog weekly, and the kind of best practice that's going on in the particular field that you're interested in. I think knowing what's happening in the industry around you, I kind of want to say competitors, but they're not really competitors. They're industry experts who are around you, knowing what they're doing, what their best practice is. And as well as that, you get to see what's not working as well. You get to see, you know, and we've done it ourselves. You know, you send out a tweet and it absolutely bombs. Nobody touches it. And you're like, oh God, why did this go so wrong? But you get to see that. And like, if you go on to Basketball Ireland, hopefully you won't find any, but I'm sure that's something that you could look into, you know, why did they tweet at this particular time of the night? And oh, they seem to have got more engagement at this particular time when they posted on Facebook. Oh, there seemed to be a drop in their video views at this time. I find all of that really fascinating, and that's the kind of work, because that's the kind of day-to-day that you're going to be dealing with if you go into the field and into sports marketing. Look at what the industry professionals are doing and saying. That would be my biggest tip, because when you get in there, even if you don't feel like you're qualified for the job, you'll have enough to bluff your way for the first couple of weeks to get you past. So
I was about to say, like the fake it until you make it concept.
Fake it till you make it, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Now, where can the viewers find Basketball Ireland and find your social media platform?
Well, we are everywhere. So there's too many of them, Tim. That's what's wrong. No, our website is basketballireland.ie, and then we're on Twitter at @bballirl. So even if you just search Basketball Ireland, we hopefully will come up. Facebook, we're the same. We're Basketball Ireland. We're also on Instagram and Snapchat and YouTube, all under the username of Basketball Ireland. So you should be able to find us all there. And we've kind of moved a lot of our streams from YouTube onto Facebook recently. So we've been doing a lot of video content there. As I said, just because it's something, a one-man show that you can do. Somebody can just go along with a phone and a tripod for Facebook Live, and it's super handy. So yeah, we're on all of those platforms, and yeah, definitely give us a look. And if you have any questions, I'm usually the person who will be answering the private messages. So if you have any questions, you can just drop us a line, and I'll get back to you on it as well.
Mary McGuire, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy day over there in the Dublin area of Ireland. Thanks so much. And if you guys have questions of Mary, please reach out to her. Thanks so much.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. We'll see you guys next time.